And that means we're up to the number one song in the USA. A smash that was the only good thing to come out of a bad relationship. Singer and songwriter Chad Kroeger says his band's first number one, quote, stemmed from a relationship I was in that was definitely going sour after 4 years. It was time to put the brakes on, unquote. The relationship came to a difficult and painful end. Chad says it wasn't an easy breakup. But it also inspired Chad to write a song about his feelings. He says, quote, the subject matter is something so many people can relate to. Everyone knows what it's like to be in a bad relationship, unquote. And he says that getting his feelings off his chest were also, quote, very therapeutic. But best of all, he took that bad situation and turned it into a hit song. And not just any hit song, but rather the song at the top of the chart. The number one song in the USA on American Top 40 for the 7th week in a row is How You Remind Me by Nickelback.
The hits from coast to coast.
We're counting down to the biggest hit of 2002. The 86th biggest hit of the year belongs to Nickelback, a band whose leader, Chad Kroeger, almost gave up his dream of making music, but after he scored parts in Canadian productions of Jesus Christ Superstar and The Wiz, he was rebitten by the music bug, and he formed Nickelback. Now, here they are with their hit, Too Bad.
All the sands of line with dirt. American Top 40.
And that means we're up to the number one song of the year, brought to you by Toys R Us. It's by a band whose lead singer spent 2 months in juvenile hall when he was 14 years old. He managed to survive because he could play guitar. His name is Chad Kroeger. When he was a teenager growing up in Canada, Chad got into some trouble. Trouble that sent him to juvenile hall for 2 months. He says at first being in juvenile hall was a pretty scary experience. First, 2 other teens tried stealing a ring he was wearing. Then another teen tried to take his running shoes. It looked as if he were going to have a rough 2 months. But Chad had been allowed to take his acoustic guitar with him, and that made a big difference. Suddenly, he wasn't just another youthful offender. He was a teen who could make music. Quote, I started playing Metallica riffs. I immediately got everyone's respect. They asked me to play a song, and I'd say, no problem. They left me alone after that. Chad Kroeger learned the power of music early. And after paying his debt to society, music became his life. Music like the song that carried Chad and his band to the top of our year-end survey. The number one song in the USA on American Top 40 for the year 2002 is How You Remind Me by Nickelback.
Never made it as a wise man. Casey's Coast to Coast.
Well, now we're up to the song Someday. It's by a band whose leader, Chad Kroeger, says the person he has to thank for his life as a rock musician is his mother. Chad says throughout his life, whenever he began to doubt the wisdom of music as a career, his mother was always there pushing him and prodding him. Chad says it was his mother who bought his first guitar for him when he was 13 and then made sure that he practiced. Chad says when he felt like he had no talent as a singer, it was his mother who told him to keep working on it. In his words, I've been singing as long as my mother has been bribing me to. He says where a lot of musicians are rebellious when it comes to their families, what he feels for his mother is gratitude. In fact, in his bio, he makes a point of writing, quote, to those single mothers out there feeling overwhelmed and unappreciated, I applaud you. And this week, Chad Kroeger has his mother to thank for the song that holds at number 8 in our survey. Here's Chad and his band Nickelback with Someday. American Top 20's heard coast to coast and around the world every week on great radio stations like Southern Oregon's music leader 98.3 KLDR, Harback, Fruitdale, Grants Pass, Medford, Oregon. And all hit music KFOX 95.5 KAFX, Diboll, Lufkin, Nacogdoches, Texas. Down a notch to number 19 is Nickelback, a band who says living in Vancouver, Canada has been good for their music. Lead singer Chad Kroeger says, quote, the winters are long and cold. It rains during the summer. There's a lot of time to work on your music. Here's Feeling Way Too Damn Good.
Casey counts them down.
Well, Well, now we're up to an American Top 20 Extra by Nickelback, a band who say they have the Canadian government to thank for getting them on the air. Chad Kroeger is a lead singer of the Canadian band Nickelback. He says that in the early days, Nickelback had little luck being played on stations in the United States, but in Canada, they got lots of airplay, and it wasn't just because their music was good. Chad says, quote, "There's a Canadian content law in Canada. Everyone calls it CanCon for short. It says that 35% of the songs on the radio have to be by Canadian artists. And since we're Canadian, we got a lot of play," unquote. Chad says the law helped his band a lot in the year 2000. They had just put out their album, The State. The Canadian government decided to be particularly strict in enforcing the CanCon rule that year, and so when radio stations started looking for songs to play, they gave The State extra attention. Chad says, quote, "It was better than having a record company working 24/7 for us. If a station didn't hit the 35% mark, they were fined. They had to play Canadian acts, and our music worked for them." Now, with an American Top 20 Extra, here's Nickelback with a smash from 2002, How You Remind Me.
Never made it as a wise man. American Top 20.
And that means we're up to the number one song in the USA this week. It's by a band whose leader takes his children on tour with him, because life on the road is a great education. Chad Kroeger is lead singer for Nickelback. He's also a family man with several children, and those kids have gotten a chance to see the world from the band's touring bus. Chad says, quote, "How great is it to go around the world when you're 4 years old? They've been to more cities than most kids will see in a lifetime. One of the things that Chad's oldest son has also learned is how it feels to be a rock star. Quote, when he was just 2, he'd go to the sound checks we'd do before our shows, and then he'd sit down at the drums in a big empty hall and start bashing away. The look on his face made it all worthwhile. That look, and of course the occasional song at the top of the chart." The number one song on American Top 20 for a second week is Photograph by Nickelback.
Look at this photograph. Casey counts them down.
And that means we're up to the number one song in the USA this week. It's by a Canadian band that's been approached by a number of big-name producers, but they've turned them down because it just seemed like too much work. Chad Kroeger says, quote, "Even our record company has told us we could use a little more direction. There are a lot of producers we respect, but we never get around to it. The band does most of their producing themselves, though they have worked with Rick Parashar, a producer they've known for years, and their engineer, Joey Moy, who has helped producing as well. But otherwise, Chad says they've avoided the superstar producers. The reason is simple. The band is just kind of lazy. Quote, "We seem like real go-getters wanting to do it all ourselves, but we're actually the opposite. Working with a new producer would mean having to relearn everything. That would be such a hassle. So we just keep doing what we do and hope for the best." And the best is what they've managed this week, with the self-produced song at the top of the chart. The number one song in the USA on American Top 20 for a third week is Savin' Me by Nickelback. And that means we're up to the number one song in the USA this week. It's by a super hot band from Canada that swears this is the first time they've sung about being in love. Now that may come as a surprise to fans of Nickelback. Songs like How You Remind Me, Because of You, and Someone That You're With certainly seem to be love songs, but lead singer Chad Kroeger says, quote, "Those songs are about love. But this song is different. It's about being in love. There's a passion in this song that was missing from the others. It's our only real love song, a song that's totally from the heart. It's a song that goes, you know that I love you. I have loved you all along. And I miss you. Been far away, far too long. A love song that's loved so much, it's at the top of the chart." The number one song in the USA on American Top 20 for a second week is Far Away by Nickelback. This week back in 2001, one of the top hits in the USA was How You Remind Me. It's by a band that got their unusual name because their bass player worked as a cashier in a coffee shop. This group from Canada was having a lot of trouble coming up with a name that all the members liked. Things were beginning to get desperate, but luckily, bass player Mike Kroeger worked as a cashier at Starbucks Coffee at the time. All day long, people ordered coffee and Mike would give them change. Often it was exactly the same change. The coffee at the Starbucks where he worked cost $1.45, which means he was often giving his customers a nickel back. The phrase stuck with him. He suggested Nickelback as a name for the band, and since they hadn't been able to come up with anything else, that's how Nickelback became Nickelback. This week back in 2001, they had one of the top hits in the USA. Here's How You Remind Me.